Hello, everyone. My name is Jared Rasmussen. I am a technical consultant with Digital Control, and I'm here to show you a quick demo today of AEM Forms. And in particular, we're going to be looking at a use case for an HR onboarding scenario. So this would be a circumstance where perhaps you have a brand new employee or maybe a series of employees that have been hired recently, and you just need to capture some personal details about them in order to properly create an employee profile, set up things like payroll or group benefits, things of that nature. So before I jump into the demo itself, I'm going to show you our quick contact us slide. So if you have any questions about the demo itself or about any of the other services that we provide as a company, feel free to reach out to myself. I've got my email address there at the top. You can also get in touch with Kenny Guest, who is our CEO and project manager, or Tracy Gates, who is our operations and engagement specialist. And any of us would be more than happy to answer any questions that you might have. So without further ado, I will hop into the form itself. And let's take a look at what's called an adaptive form. So an adaptive form is it's a form that still has a lot of the same elements that you would typically find on a paper form, but sometimes when you're filling out a form, there'll be certain sections or pieces of content that aren't relevant to you as the person filling out the form. And so to alleviate potential for human error or confusion, we often in an adaptive form will show or hide different sections depending on user inputs. And so I'll showcase some of that as we get to those particular areas. But one other feature that I wanted to showcase quickly within AEM Forms is the ability to use the emulator tool. And what this allows you to do is to see some of the responsiveness of the web form itself that is displayed depending on the type of device that a user might be accessing your form from. So for example, right now I'm using a desktop computer and I got this form set up in desktop mode. If I wanted to, though, I could easily flip it using this emulator to see what it would look like on an iPad in portrait mode. So you can see that that form has been re-rendered in a slightly different visual format in order to cater to an iPad user. And again, if I was to go down to a mobile phone level, in this case, looking at an iPhone 5, I could do that. iPhone 6 Plus, again, slightly wider display. And so you'll see how the form is able to re-render and become responsive depending on the type of device that it's being viewed on. I'll hop back to desktop view here before we hop into the next section. And let's take a look at the form that we've put together. And this is based on just a fictitious company that I've created called ABC Incorporated. And we've got our new employee onboarding form here. And we've got a couple of tabs here to look at. So we've got things like general info, which will have a small description of some instructions for the user before they actually start filling out the form, as well as a privacy policy. And again, I just pulled a cookie cutter one from the internet for this. But one thing that I want to talk about quickly, at least with the privacy policy, is this is actually a really good candidate for what we would call a fragment. And what a fragment is within AEM Forms, it's a reusable piece of content that can be dragged and dropped into any number of forms that you need. And the benefit here is for something like a privacy policy where you're probably going to have to put this on a large number of forms, often up into the hundreds of numbers of forms. Um, Rather than having to manually type that in on every individual form, by creating a fragment, you can just simply drag and drop that fragment in and it'll populate that content into the form for you. The other benefit here to using a fragment is that if you needed to make a change to this particular piece of content, and in our example, we're looking at the privacy policy, rather than having to make that change across those hundreds of forms that you may have in your organization, by simply making the change to the fragment itself, what will happen is all of those changes will then be propagated out to every form that that fragment exists in. So again, it saves you a lot of time and headache from an authoring and from a maintenance standpoint in being able to maintain and manage content as you have it in your forms. So let's take a look at the next panel here, which is our personal info panel. And I'm just going to quickly enter in some details here. And you can see there's some JavaScript running in the background that's taking all of my inputs and pushing them all into uppercase. That's not necessarily a requirement. That's just a feature that I decided to add for this form just to showcase some of the flexibility. Some other features as well are things such as display pattern formats. So for example, for a social insurance number, I've just mashed in the 5 key 9 times because I know a social insurance number is 9 digits long. If I move away, you'll see it adds the nice little spacing between the sets of 3 digits, as we would normally expect to see on a social insurance number. With those patterns, you also have the ability to do some validation. So for example, I know that a phone number typically shouldn't have letters in it. It should be digits. So if I just mash the keyboard here with some nonsense, you'll see that obviously it's not a proper phone number format, and that field has been flagged indicating such. If I come back and enter in a number that actually would match a proper phone number format, you'll see that it, very much like the social insurance number, is going to do a display pattern on that for what a phone number should look like. And because it's 10 digits, it recognizes it as a proper phone number and will allow me to move forward from that field. I'll enter in an email address here, and that'll become relevant when we hop into looking at my inbox at the end of this demo, because I'm going to showcase some of the workflow functionality, and I'll get to that shortly as well. I'll add a street address and some other details here as well. And I've got a drop down. I'll select my province and a postal code. And again, this postal code, very much like the phone number and social insurance number, you can apply any type of display or validation patterns as necessary. In this case, obviously, being in Canada, I would want it to follow a particular format for the postal code. If you're in the United States, obviously, you'd want that to be all digits, typically 5, sometimes 9, depending on how specific you want to be. So you've got flexibility there with how you want those text and form fields to be validated and created. So that's the personal information tab. Let's hop into our emergency contacts. And again, I'm just going to quickly enter some details. And excellent. So we've got some information there. And so now we're going to start looking at some of the adaptiveness of the form. So right now you can see along the left, I've currently only got the one tab labeled before you begin. As I click next, what's going to happen is we're going to look at actually creating some of the forms that we need to have submitted to our fictitious HR department. And what will happen is those forms will be pre-filled as much as possible with a lot of this information that we are just now providing. So click on the next button here and you can see that we have 5 additional tabs that have appeared on the left-hand side. And right now we're going to be looking at the confidentiality agreement. So again, this is just a vanilla one that I found online. You could define this however you want within your organization. I can capture a signature at the bottom here, so I'll just do a little squiggly. And you can see it's already pre-filled that employee name that we typed in, John Jones, as well as we've got our date signed, and this has been set up to be always as today's date. So if I was to come back to this form to try and fill it out tomorrow, it would show as April 7th rather than April the 6th. I'll click on the checkbox here and click next. Now we're looking at union dues authorization. So again, kind of a rinse and repeat here. I've got a signature I'll enter. It's already pre-filled my name. It's already got the date signed set up. Click on next, and now I'm looking at group benefits. So here's a great scenario where we would be looking at some of the adaptiveness of this form. So as an employee looking to fill out my group benefits, if I am single and perhaps don't have any dependents and I don't have any other benefits providers, I could simply advance on to the next phase after punching in my birth date. And I'm just going to change that to say 1969. And that would be the end of that step. But obviously, if either of these is true, then there's going to be some additional information that we need to capture. So for example, if I do have another employer that I have benefits through, I could click on that box and indicate the name of that existing group benefits provider. So I'll just make one up here, DEF Group Benefits. And same thing goes for the dependent information. If I didn't have any dependents, I could just continue. But for the sake of the demo, I will say that I've got some dependents. And so you can see that this new panel has appeared asking for some information for dependent 1 and dependent 2. You could define this again however you want. You could have just one by default and then have the button set up to just add multiples as necessary. But I'll just leave these two for now. And let's go with, say, Bob Saget. I don't know if his middle initial is M, but we'll just roll with that for today. Oh, that's, and let's keep going with the Bob theme here. We'll go with Bob Barker. And I'm just going to grab some quick birth dates there, just for the sake of speed, and we'll click next. So now we're looking at some payroll direct deposit information. And again, you'll notice I've got some options here, whether I want to upload a void check or if perhaps I wanted to enter my banking information manually. So if I have it set to the default right now, which is the upload option, I have this file attachment button that I could click and grab a file from my local file system on my computer and then upload it as part of my submission. If I'd rather enter my information manually, I could do that here as well. And you can see it's created a few fields here now for me to enter that detail, as well as I've provided an image as a reference point for the person filling out this form so they can make sure that they get that information correct. For the demo though, I will stick with the upload. That way I can show some of that feature as well. So I've clicked on attach and I've grabbed a file here from my computer, just a sample check image. I will add my signature one more time, and it's already grabbed the date signed, and let's click on next. So on this form, I've put some pretty bare bones CSS. Obviously, in a production scenario, you're going to want to have some marketing or branding team members take a look at a form to make sure that it adheres to brand standards and that it looks the way that you want it to. For the demo, I kept it pretty simple just so that way I could showcase the functionality more than anything. So we're on our final review page here, and it's just going to spit out some details based on what we've put in. If for whatever reason I saw that this information was incorrect, I could click on this button, I need to update my information. It would take me back to the appropriate panels and allow me to make those changes and save those changes and then come back. So I'm going to assume that this information is good. I'll click on this checkbox indicating such, and now I'm ready to move on to the submit phase. So what's going to happen now, I'll click on submit. It'll take a couple of moments to submit this form, and what will happen is it's going to create a couple of things. It's going to send off a request to create some PDF renderings of the forms that I've just filled out, and it's going to send them via email to the email address that I've provided. And so what you can do is you can send an email back to the person who filled out the form saying, here are some digital copies for you to keep for your records. You can send those PDFs back to your HR department, or you could simply take the data that they've provided and push it straight into a database. The sky's the limit there. It's really however you want to define that, and that's all done using workflows. And so if I hop back now into my email, you'll see here's this submission that we've just received. So I'll open up that email, and here is that void check that I've uploaded. And here are the flattened PDF forms that have been rendered as well. Again, just very simple forms that I've put together just for the sake of the demo. And you can see here is all of that detail that has been pushed in. The payroll direct deposit form, you'll notice that there's a few blank fields here. And the reason that is because we chose not to enter that detail manually. We actually indicated that we were uploading that void check, which we saw earlier. Employee profile, group benefits, and confidentiality agreement, again, with all of the inputs pushed directly into the form. So this is great because it's able to save you a lot of time in trying to capture this detail that oftentimes you'd be capturing on traditionally a paper document, as well as because you have some of that field validation that I showed earlier in those areas such as the postal code and the phone number, you're able to remove a lot of the human error elements from people filling out forms and creating these forms. And then you're able to push them in a much nicer fashion back to your HR departments, your HR team members in order to handle and process them as necessary. So that's really all I've got for you today. I'm going to hop back to PowerPoint here and so you can see our contact us information again. Like I say, feel free to reach out if you have any questions about anything that I've shown today. And if you have any other questions in general about some of the services that we offer, we do dabble in AEM Forms, sites, Adobe Analytics, pretty much everything within the Adobe Experience Cloud platform. And it branches out to other areas as well, such as DevOps, project management, that sort of thing. So feel free to reach out if you've got any questions, like I say, and hope you all enjoyed this demo and I look forward to connecting. Thanks.